Good morning, everybody. My name is Colby Pitts. I'm the FFL coordinator for Hernando County. I'm here with Master Gardener Bernie. Um, Dr. Bill is out today, so it'll be just us two, as we've done a few times in the past. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and we'll do our best to give you a nice, maybe not succinct, but an accurate answer. Bernie, do you have anything in particular you'd like to talk about today?
Well, I've had a couple of people in this morning brought in lawn samples, and we can discuss what the current big thing is, which is one always the St. Augustine lawns here. Um, Fella had classic take all root rot. Uh, you know, I cannot overemphasize. You have to mow this stuff at 4 inches. If you mow it at 2 inches, which is what everybody does, the root structure is only a couple inches long. So you go out, you mow the grass at 2 inches, especially in the summer. Then you water it your one day, which is all you're allowed, and 3/4 of an inch of water completely takes care of a foot of soil. So you're very careful. You don't want to overwater. You don't want to underwater. You put down the right amount. You've mowed your lawn at 2 inches. It looks beautiful. Uh, well, the thing about it is, if the roots are only 2 inches long, in a couple of days, the roots aren't in where the water is. The top
Mm-hmm.
2 inches dry out right away, and now there's plenty of water in the soil, but the plant isn't getting it. The
Mm-hmm.
grass is screaming it needs something, and once the grass is under stress, in our county anyway, take all root rot is super prevalent. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, because you mow it short, you develop a fungus infection, and it's difficult to explain to people how critical this is. If you mow it at 4 inches, the root structure goes 8 to 12 inches long. Well, 8 to 12 inches of root keeps you in the water all week long. So uh, is being able to water one day a week enough? Well, it is if you mow at 4 inches. It isn't if
Mm-hmm.
you mow at 2 inches. And a really good example of that is a golf course. The greens are mowed at a half inch or 3/8 of an inch, but they have to water them every night, every night, every night.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and they've got professionals that are coming in and really taking care of that, because if you foul up 1 or 2 days, you wipe out a green, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a very expensive thing to resod the greens. So the
It's
golfer should understand that if you're gonna mow at 2 inches, you've got to have a truck bring in water from out of state, because it's not legal to use our water out of the
Mm-hmm.
aquifer on your lawn, and uh,
Yeah.
and there's
It's
there's no reason to have to if you mow it at a higher rate. So uh, that's the number one thing, and I get that uh, every week, every week, every week.
Oh yeah.
And I
And it's
give
funny.
people a little ruler and say, here, take this ruler, go home and measure and look and see. If it's not 4 inches, show this to the guy that's mowing the lawn and say, can you mow it so that it comes up to here? And if he says yes and doesn't do it, you don't pay him. And if he says no, you get somebody else. And if he does mow it at 4 inches, then your problems go away. It helps keep the weeds down, makes the lawn healthy. Everybody's much happier. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your stronger grass well, it stays healthier. That take all root rot is really opportunistic, so it's just waiting, biding its time, waiting for your grass to be stressed out and weakened in some way or another. And then as soon as it is, that's when you see the dead spots. And by the time you have dead spots, it's too late for that portion of your lawn. It's funny you mention the golf green. So behind me is the green of
Yeah.
hole 12 at Augusta. It's the first day of the Masters today. And I was just thinking, I was like, I wonder how much, turf management they put in, especially in the weeks leading up to the tournament, on that green right there. Like, got to be an insane amount of water. So we do have a question here, and that's what would you recommend for lawn alternatives like wildflowers, purslane, partridge berries?
Um, there's a lot of those little things.
Mm-hmm.
It depends. Are we in the sun? You know, if you're just going to go for a lawn alternative, uh, EcoTurf, uh,
The perennial peanut,
perennial
yeah.
peanut works pretty nice. Gives you some little yellow flowers, and it's fairly short. It's good looking. It's two disadvantages. One, uh, it needs full sun, and second, it does tend to get zapped with frost and stays brown until uh, it starts warming up, and then it recovers really quick. So,
You also have to remember like what your use case is. If you have young children that are going to be running around the lawn, a lot of those ground covers are not gonna take very well to a lot of foot traffic or parking your car on it for sure. Um, the University of Florida, they have a really good IFAS article on different ground covers that kind of talks about some of the different pros and cons to a bunch of the other ones. So I'd start there because it really depends. There's a lot of different you know conditions that your lawn can have that sun some ground covers will work really well on and some won't. So it's kind of hard to give a flat recommendation. Bernie, I was going to ask you. Speaking of ground covers, we I was just at my fiance's parents' house a few days ago, and they have these little tiny clover-looking plants, little small white and yellow flowers. And I was thinking, I was like, man, this stuff, it grows like crazy. It covers up. They have a St. Augustine lawn that's not all St. Augustine, and it's growing up kind of over the St. Augustine. It looks, I mean, honestly, I think it looks fine. And they're, freaking out about not having grass. And I'm like, this, it covers up the ground. I wouldn't worry about it too much. You guys don't have kids or anything running around the front lawn. It might be fine.
well, that's clover. There are a couple of varieties that do reasonably well. If you're an older person, you were a child in the 50s, then you remember things like four-leaf clovers and a lawn that had dandelions and we didn't have the monoculture. The monoculture thing was a product of advertising in the 50s. So it was a wonderful sales job. If you didn't have a great lawn and it wasn't all monoculture and didn't have all the weeds removed, you weren't a good husband and you weren't a good father, and it worked. And
Yeah, people believed it, huh?
yeah, everybody thinks that's the way it should be. So uh, I have to commend those people for doing a great job of promoting their product. But unfortunately, it's made it difficult for people to accept lawns with anything
Yeah,
that
to let go of that sentiment. Yeah.
if it's not perfect. So, oh, and by
Uh,
the way, if you don't have uh, a lot of sun, if you have areas where there is no sun, you've got oak trees. Asiatic jasmine works around
mhm.
the oak trees. Uh, Normally, uh, the
They said
flower
there's
azaleas work great underneath the trees. So
they said there's sun and shade. So you may be looking at uh, you know, different species for those different areas, those different applications. The Asiatic jasmine takes pretty well in a shady area, but it also is not really good for foot traffic. If you walk on it, it's probably not going to do very well. Um, but moving on a little bit, we have. I feel like a lot of people don't know about water restrictions like Nestle. Well, that is, corporations and stuff is a completely different ballgame, especially when you're pulling, I mean, regulatory wise, when you're pulling from, especially a company like that that's, producing a product that some would deem to be necessary. I do know that in Hernando County, anyway, we do have a lot of, all the businesses are regulated pretty much on the same terms as our residents. And then Michael Stillman says, "What kind of grass are we speaking of?" Well, I believe this came up what we were talking about, take all root rot, and that's going to be St. Augustine. I don't. Does take all root rot
That's
affect any other?
Floritam St. Augustine that's
Yeah.
warranted. Floritam is the major grass in our county. The
Hmm.
other major grass is Bahia. There are some other St. Augustines. Bitter blue, I believe, only has to be mowed at 2 inches, and that's enough blade to provide full rootstock. Uh, but none of the other St. Augustines have really taken over. There are some varieties that uh, get great big claims that they work fantastic. You know, the thing that made Floritam so great was initially it was uh, chinch bug resistant. Well, that lasted for about 4 or 5 years, and then the chinch bugs either it lost its resistance or the chinch bugs got smarter, one or the other. But the chinch bugs took over, and it was a big enough problem that although it was 20 years ago, people are still treating St. Augustine lawns like they did 20 years ago, and it's
Hmm.
totally inappropriate. Uh, the hay lawns, you can mow them at 3.5 inches. Problem with Bahia is that it it wants to reseed itself. Each one of the little blades on Bahia is an individual plant. So if one dies, it leaves a little hole in the lawn. And over a period of time, a few of them die, and you get some
Yeah.
holes, and then you get some weeds. And the weeds shade out the grass, and then a few more die, and then you have more holes, and it tends to just go downhill. So if you're in a position where you can let it reseed itself, and it does, it puts up seed heads. You mow it, it thinks the cows came through and chewed it all up, and it pops up these little seed heads with the V's on top, and we got these little things all over the lawn, little black seeds on them. Those seeds are, for the most part, never going to germinate, but one or two will,
Hmm.
and they'll replace the blades that get missed. But it takes a couple of weeks for that seed head popping up to produce a viable grass. So
Hmm.
if you're in a, a homeowners association situation, you usually can't let it go long enough to do any good. Works great out on the highway. They come by, they mow it. As soon as they're done mowing, it pops up seed heads. They're
Yeah.
not coming back for 3 or 4 weeks, and the thing keeps itself reseeded. But if you use Bahia in a home situation, you probably need to overseed uh, once or twice a year with a little seed, and it's expensive. But grass is
Yeah.
expensive. You know, grass is
Yeah.
an alien plant in Florida. There are no lawn grasses that are happy in Florida. We're trying to do something that shouldn't even be done. So
Hmm. Um, Back in Sumter County, where especially on where I lived, um, very few HOAs. I lived in a big cow pasture, so it wasn't you didn't have to mow all the time. You might mow the little bit around the house, but that's about it. And that is some of the that was just it was always our lawn was always full and green until the grass went dormant. It got a little brown, and then it was all good. So I do think that you're in HOA, you have to mow a lot. That probably is going to have not it's not going to be good for your grass if you're not letting those seed heads sit for a little while. So Michael says he has Bahia, and it's a disaster. Every weed known to man. What advice do we have?
okay, if you're going to do Bahia, the first thing you have to do is a soil test. Bahia is a grass that wants acid soil. The optimum pH is 5.5. Most soils in our area are 6.5 to 7.
Hmm.
That's the end of the range for Bahia. So Bahia is not going to be very happy if you have a 7.2 or a 7.5 pH. Bahia is going to be a terrible lawn.
Hmm.
So uh, The first thing you do is you get a soil test. And if the pH is acceptable, then after you put the Bahia in, you need to go in early spring before the weeds are started to pop up and put down a pre-emergent herbicide, something to stop the weed seeds from germinating.
Mm-hmm.
Then about 1st of May, you need to go through, and the weeds that snuck through and germinated, you need to use a weed killer that's for Bahia and get rid of the weeds. Now, once it gets above 85 degrees, the weed killers kill Bahia. You have to be really careful on that, and you cannot use weed killers that are specific for St. Augustine's on Bahia. So they just damage the lawn. So, and then after you do all that, you need to mow it high. You need to mow it 3.5 to 4 inches, and you need to. Oh, I guess they're closing the door. I'm talking too loud for the people. So you need to reseed once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
and your lawn keeps going. Now the thing about it is, remember that no lawn is happy in Florida. This isn't a case of we can go out and get a handful of fescue seed and throw it on the ground like you do up north. You're asking a plant to grow here that doesn't even want to be in Florida. So, we are just at that spot in the world where there aren't any grasses that really want to be in our area, and grass is not a great plant. So,
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, a lot of those 2,4-D herbicides, under 85 degrees are safe to use on Bahia.
that's
Um,
correct.
so look for something because a lot of them are not one. The stuff that you would buy as a consumer are not just one herbicide. It's a combination of a couple different herbicides that do different stuff, take care of different plants. Because if you're dealing with different species of weeds in your yard, one thing probably isn't going to kill them all. So they have a combination, and they're trying to make that exact combination that can kill everything but Bahia. So you do kind of have to do your research, definitely. And then moving down the comments here, Michael says his well water is 7.4. Yeah, you're in all that's pulling from calcium carbonate, so it's all going to be a little bit basic. That's what all of our bedrock is here anyway. Which is why the pHs are a little bit higher. And then
That's why plants do so much better with rainwater than they do with well water.
Yep.
The carbon dioxide in rainwater forms carbonic acid and tends to lower the pH, and you have a nice soft water with no calcium or other minerals in it, and the plants really like it.
You're giving me flashbacks to organic chemistry. I don't want to think about any onic acids for a while. I'm not okay doing that yet. And to move on a little bit, what is the best fertilizer to use on your lawn? So that's actually a tough question, and one that should definitely be answered by going to your local extension office and getting a soil test done. It's $10. They're going to tell you exactly what nutrients that your soil is deficient in. You tell them what grass you have, what you're trying to grow.
In our county, we have plenty of phosphate.
Yeah.
So ideally, what we need is nitrogen and potassium. And the commercial people like to use nitrogen and put it down several times a year. They use it in a liquid form, and they like that because the nitrogen makes it go green, and it shows something, and the people are happy because they feel like they got their money's worth. Creates some problems. The thing that happens is the lawn is always growing. It produces more thatch that way, and it doesn't really help the root structure. So if you could get a lawn fertilizer that had equal nitrogen and potassium, like 15-0-15. Don't need the phosphorus. We need the potassium and the nitrogen.
Hmm.
Get slow release fertilizer, granular, and apply it twice a year. That would be all that you need. That is great fertilizer, and that works best on either Bahia or St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not what people sell. So uh, you want a fertilizer with the least phosphorus and the most potassium that you can get.
Hmm.
So
And you have to remember that growth is a stressor. So that grass when it's growing is stressed out. So by putting it into that grow mode all the time by multiple, nitrogen fertilizations a year, you I mean, yeah, sure, it'll be green, but it's also going to be stressed out. But moving on a little more, what's the ideal ground cover? Well, that is a loaded question. It really depends on where you're at. It's kind of tough to make that recommendation without getting a soil test, having all that stuff up, and you really need to
well,
know the conditions of your lawn when it comes to sun, shade, how much
you
water
know
it
that,
gets, etc.
that's one of those things. The truth is, there are places where grass is the ideal ground cover. You've got a young child that wants to play out in the
Hmm.
backyard. I mean, that is obviously a great place for grass.
Yep.
Um, if you want to put in some islands and put in flowers and specimen plants and have showy islands, then grass really makes those things kick up and look
Hmm.
great. So the ideal ground cover is dependent on what's going with it. And the
Yeah.
picture behind you, there are things. The grass goes right up, and then there's things covering the ground in the background,
Hmm.
and that is ground cover. Anything that is there besides uh, trees is
Bare dirt,
ground cover.
trees. Yeah. So I think that's all. I mean, they have these mulched. I believe that's all pine straw under there, but you have to remember, like, this landscape is your landscape. It's for you. You have to remember it's not only just what works the best. You also have to take into account your needs, what you need it like, what you're planning to do with it, because you don't want to go plant, like I said, a bunch of Asiatic jasmine and then have your little kid run around on it, because one, he's not going to have a good time,
No, that's not.
and neither is the Asiatic jasmine. So um,
If you
it's
got
it
dogs, you
yeah,
you
and
can't.
dogs too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really a super case by case on what the ideal ground cover is. It all goes back to that first principle of Florida friendly landscaping, which is right plant, right place, where you take into account all of your site conditions, what your needs are, etc. So another question here is rainwater safety use coming off a shingle roof.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's where all that rain barrel water comes from, and I've heard pretty good stuff, pretty good results from people watering their plants with that rain barrel water. The plants like soft water.
The plants really like soft water. I can't think of any plants that don't like soft water.
Hmm. Especially here in Florida, almost all of the water you get from the ground, if it's not treated. I've lived in a lot of stinky
Yeah.
water houses in my life, because I mean, where I'm from, like, nobody has. Everyone's on a well, every single person, and more than half of those have stinky egg water, and
Well,
that's what you got.
the thing about it is the reason we have all those sinkholes is that the rock has dissolved into the water and
Hmm.
and left a big empty space as far as support. There's
Yeah,
nothing but water down there. So
the
uh,
water table
all
gets
that
low
rock
enough.
is
Those
in the water.
Yeah, those karst formations just woof, and then you have a big old hole in the ground. Um, Michael says a 15-0-15 fertilizer.
At one point, there were some companies that made 15015, and that was the university recommendation. And then you couldn't get 15015, but you could get 17017, which, the only difference is how much you apply. And then the 17017 didn't sell all that well, and now it's back to uh, real high nitrogen, medium potassium, and some phosphorus thrown in. But 15015 or that ilk, if you can find some, is perfect for our county.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a county that it's up north and you don't have as much phosphorus, maybe that's not correct. You may want some maybe 15-4-15 or something like that. But
that's where that soil test comes in, is it? Because they'll tell you. I mean, they can look at what's in your soil and tell you exactly what nutrients are you need and what you're missing, and what you have a lot of. So moving on a little bit, Teresa put some really good links here to both of the ground cover articles I've read about it. Little pines growing. Could I trim as it grows for pine mulch?
no.
Yeah. Simple answer. I am at my desk today. I'm not back in the crypt, so my phone's ringing right now, and I can't really do much about it. So we're gonna listen to the Looney Tunes track play here for a minute. But to keep going, two big dogs, kids play soccer, love walking around the property. Then a lot of those ground covers, grass might be the right thing for you guys.
It depends on the property. If most of the big playing fields are Bermuda grass, and Bermuda has a lot of terrible things going for it as a lawn, but it works good for playing fields for some reason. So baseball courts and that kind of thing. Counties use Bermuda in those situations, and there are a few places where Bermuda would be a good thing. Golf courses use a lot of Bermuda.
Yeah, I would not want to putt on a Bahia green. That would be terrible. I do like when I was go off on our little tangent of the day here. When I was in high school, I played golf, and my dad tried his hardest to grow me a putting surface in the backyard. Did not work. Just didn't. We couldn't get it to go. So I got a sheet of AstroTurf that we laid on the driveway, and that's what it ended up being. But to keep moving down here, rerouted our sprinklers to come from the well instead of the softener. Was that a bad move?
No, that's a smart move. The thing about it is that the softened water still has a lot of things in it that you don't get rid of. What it does is get rid of some of the calcium, but for the most part, it really doesn't make much difference whether you're using water softener or straight water. The thing about it is you're not going through as much salt, and
that's
water
what I was going to
softener
say.
Does end up with some salt, and the salt's not really good for the lawn. So it's a toss up. The amount of salt you get because it's from a softener probably offsets the fact that it's soft water. So
I just know
it takes one half dozen of the other.
Yeah,
but it's more expensive with softened water.
My last house that we lived in, I feel like I was buying salt every week, so I can only imagine. And was not irrigating, so I can only imagine how much salt you'd go through trying to irrigate using that softened water. I don't think they were satisfied with the answer to the pine question about this one right here. Why can they not trim that pine tree as it's growing? I
I
think I
don't
might
like
know the
that.
answer, but I'm
I
gonna let
don't
you go
like
for it.
trimming young pine trees. I
Hmm.
think that if you know that is damaging. I think so.
Yeah, if you want those plants to grow to adulthood, then you probably want to let them go for a while. If you really think about it, out in the wild, out in the woods, so many the percentage of those pine trees that make it to full adulthood is so low. It's so low. So you have to think like if you can help them out, that obviously the percentage of pines that are cared for is going to go. It's going to be a lot higher. But they do need a little help, I think. Can we grow caper bush in Central Florida? Where can they buy the plant or the seeds?
We're gonna have Teresa look that up. I have no idea.
And I was going to mention this before. The current recommendation from the University of Florida is not to use that rain barrel water for like don't drink it, don't feed it to your animals or give it to your animals to drink. Don't put it in your swimming pool and don't use it on your edibles. There's a whole lot of studies on this, and feel free to do your own research. But that is the official recommendation of the university is not to use it on edibles. I've read a whole lot of papers on this, and I've had a hard time making up my mind even. So I'm going to
Well,
defer to the folks at UF what they're
I'm
saying.
going to tell you a little story. I uh, bought a bunch of little animal things, uh, cyclops and parameciums and amoebas and just grew them to see if I could do it. And I needed something to feed them. And the way you get something to feed all these guys is you take a glass of water and you put a piece of rice in the bottom of the glass of water, one little grain of rice, and you let it sit out on a table. And at the end of 3 or 4 days, there's things growing in that water you can't imagine. And you get bacteria and you get little animals. And pretty soon it gets to the point where there's a lot of if you leave this glass with one little grain of rice sitting on a table, it develops a great community. And then you use that water and you feed the rest of the animals, the little cyclops and things. So if you can get that from the water in your or from the air in your house, just imagine what's floating around outside waiting for an opportunity to survive. So those rain barrels that are sitting there, all the little critters that were growing on your roof are washed down into that water. Uh, and then they sit there and because they're now food for other critters, more critters come along. And of course you got mosquito larvae and uh, they survive in that water. The water out in the wild someplace, if it's sitting there still, it's got things growing in it. And although they're so small you don't see them, they're there. And so you do not want to drink water that is run off the roof because it contains all the things that have grown on the roof over a long period of time.
Um, so there you go. There's your answer. Yeah, no, visual recommendation is not to, but like I said, there's a whole lot of studies on it, so feel
I
free to do your own
I I
research. But
wouldn't worry about putting it on the plants as long as you were not pouring the water on the parts that you were going to eat. In other words, I wouldn't use it on lettuce leaves, uh,
hmm
but you could use it to side dress water along the lettuce, uh, and you could use it in that respect on most plants. But I would not put it on uh, anything that you were going to eat.
um, and then moving on here, they don't intend for the pines to grow, just peeking through their bushes.
Oh, in that case, if they don't want them to grow up, go ahead and
Do whatever you want with them.
pines only have one meristem. So if you chop out the top, you foul up the pine.
Hmm.
They only want to grow off the top.
Um, and then haven't tried the rain barrel method. Did not know about not to use for edibles. What is the purpose for them actually?
Well, the rain barrel provides you with soft water or low pH water that is ideal for most plants. If you have flowers, the whole flower can take it. If you're using it in a garden, you don't want to put it on the edible portions. In other words, you could use it to water tomato plants, but you wouldn't water the tomatoes. So uh, I'm not so sure that there aren't some. It's like gray water. The A lot of cities sell gray water, and it's used for irrigation, but it's not used uh, on edible plants.
I think I think it's a little cleaner than gray water, but yeah, that's kind of how you should look at it. Just don't drink out of your rain barrel. That's the big takeaway I want everyone to get from there. I was really trying to figure out about this caper bush. I didn't even know what that was. And it seems like it. So if you look up what hardiness zone it's in, let me go back up here and find this question. It says 8 to 10, but this is a Mediterranean plant, which means it's probably like a California 8 to 10 and not a Florida 8 to 10. If I had to guess, it's probably too wet here. If I, my 5 minutes of research opinion. And UF does not have any articles on it, which means it probably doesn't grow well here. Moving on a little bit, we have, I wish that some kind of filter to filter the water going to the rain barrel. There is a screen on the top. I think the intention there is to keep leaves, any animals from going in there. And I've heard that there's not, people don't typically have a lot of mosquito problems. It's a pretty fine screen. But I don't know. I feel like those filters they slow down the flow of water so much if you have a good one that you'd end up just filling your gutters up with water and then they'd fall off the side of your house.
Well, the thing about it is, if you had a little pond in your backyard and you were taking water from that pond and watering your garden, would you water the edible part of the plants that you were going to have? The water that comes out of the rain barrel is no worse than the water that comes out of a pond.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the water that comes out of the rain barrel is no worse than the water that comes out of some of the wells. If you have a well in an area that's contaminated and you don't know it, you could use that water for a lot of purposes that you shouldn't. We're not telling you that the rain barrel water is bad. We're telling you that you should exercise some due diligence with any water that you're using, be it pond water, rain barrel water, water out of a faucet. That if you have an area where the water sits a long time, I worked in an airport and we had this big exotic sprinkler system, and there's a big sign out there on the sprinkler system that says this water is not potable. Now, and it's because it sat there in those pipes for a long period of time. It's not that it isn't good water. It was the same water that comes out of the faucet that we drink, but any water that sits a long time or sits out in the open gets contaminated. everything gets contaminated. That's the way the world operates. So uh, you know, that's why the county puts chlorine in the water that they're sending out there. That's to temporarily uh, ensure that you won't have a problem. But you can't take county water, put it in a bucket, and let it sit a month, and then drink it. That's not the
Yeah.
way things work.
If you found the water bottle that rolled under the seat of your car, you have to be pretty thirsty to drink it. You know what I mean? I don't know how long that's been there. I'm not drinking. I'm not drinking month-old water bottle water personally. Um, but moving along here.
Let's see.
Um,
I had an interesting one in this morning. Lady brought in a magnolia tree branch, and it had uh, one of the little air plants on it. And she was concerned that it might be damaging your tree. You know, there are a lot of air plants that grow in Florida, and
mhm,
for the most part, they're kind of like in the bromeliad family. They don't attach to the plant that, other than physically, they do not have anything absorbing nutrients out of the plant, and they're really kind of neat. Spanish moss is one of them. Um, I think that probably Spanish moss is the one that we get the most people asking, how do we get rid of it? Generally, if you have a lot of Spanish moss in a plant, it's because the plant's under stress, and the canopy uh, provides a lot of open space that the
mhm.
Spanish moss can hang on to. For the most part, it really doesn't hurt the plant. If you got an oak tree and it's got Spanish moss hanging off of it, it doesn't hurt the oak tree.
Like every oak tree has Spanish moss hanging off
Yeah,
every single one.
but some plants get such an accumulation that it starts to interfere with the photosynthesis of the plant, and,
Mhm.
and you do have to remove it. And there isn't any good chemical to spray on Spanish moss and get rid of it. If you use a copper-based fungicide on it, that does zap it, but it turns it into a mush, which is harder to get off than the Spanish moss was. So
Mhm.
you know, it's just not a good thing. And that's in the same family as pineapples. It's amazing. And if you go out and start looking real close, there a lot of times you can find the little tiny flowers. And it's amazing how small they are.
Mhm.
Uh, and there's a whole community of things that maybe you got a bat living in the Spanish moss, and
Yeah,
you just never know what's in there.
I remember as a kid just that was something we did on the weekend. It's like go get that wheelbarrow and you're gonna fill it up 6 times full of Spanish moss. You're gonna be real itchy afterwards and get it done. um,
Yeah.
but moving down here, my property is predominantly sandhill. Says Mike. What type of plants could I look to use to begin natural soil amendment without having to go spend money to dump truckloads of soil or mulch on a quarter-acre plot?
Well,
Oh yeah.
that there again,
I
what first thing you want to do is get a soil test.
mhm.
You make up your mind. Do we want predominantly grass, or do we want predominantly landscape plants?
Mhm.
Or do you want 50-50 or whatever? And do a soil test, and if this sand hill is a 3.5 or a 5.5 pH, it's a natural put in Bahia grass where you need grass. And
Mhm.
if it's 7.5 or 8, we're going to have to do something different than Bahia anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, Compost is probably the absolute best thing you can use to start improving the soil. Compost does a lot of good things because it already has a lot of uh, little microbes living in it, and it's generally the microbes in the soil that make the nutrients available. So if
Hmm.
you have sterile sand and you plant something, it's just generally not going to do very well. So you need to have enough organic material that the microbes will work. I've heard of people that used sugar thinking that sugar was feeding the plant. Well, sugar doesn't feed the plant, but sometimes sugar will feed the microbes, and the microbes will help make nutrients available to the plant. So you get some plant growth that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise because of the availability that the microbes have created for you. So compost, get whatever compost you can. The more compost, the merrier. That stuff only lasts a couple of years.
Hmm.
So um, when you get the plants in, if you use mulch and keep the mulch up, as the mulch decays, it also adds organic material to the soil. By
Hmm.
the way, pure sand doesn't really hold anything. If you
Hmm.
put fertilizer on pure sand, it goes right through. As soon as you get a rain, everything just leaches right through. If you have organic material in the soil, the organic material electrically bonds to all these minerals. And the organic material stops the leaching, or it slows it way down
Hmm.
so that these things become available to the plant. So uh, organic material of some kind, either uh, mulch or compost, is I can't overemphasize how important that is if you have poor soil. That's where you
Yeah.
start improving the soil.
Yeah.
Just
So
going out
he,
and buying truckloads of soil won't do any good because it's going to leach out and it's going to disappear. It's the things being replaced. Okay, you really need to get a soil sample.
mhm.
That is important.
And just to add a little bit of context, he says it's going to be used for a food forest, so predominantly edibles. Just all what was there, it seems.
Okay, um, that's good because if you're going to do a food forest, that means that we can plant some trees that are going to give us some uh, product. We not only can we get the food off of the trees, some fruit, but we're going to have the leaves adding organic material to our soil. So, um, that's a place you put in a loquat tree, and
Hmm. And those things will grow just about anywhere.
uh,
Uh,
maybe a mulberry tree. Well, on a quarter acre lot, I wouldn't put a mulberry. That would be asking for problems. But
yeah, you have to stay on top of it. I mean, there's a lot of plants that native cool plants I think that just grow in sandhill naturally. So might be something to look into. Moving along here, pre-filter kits of salves that work really well. I'll have to look into that. I haven't looked too much into the rain barrel filtering stuff. My bush bean leaves are turning brown. What is a common disease and how to treat?
turning brown on the tips often is an indication of a root problem or watering problem. Um, and the terrible part about it is you can't tell just by looking whether it's too much water or not enough water. Uh, if the leaves are turning brown in the middle of the leaves, that's generally a bad indication. Um, the fungal diseases uh, on most of those things uh, you can treat um, with Daconel. Daconel's a good fungicide for all that stuff.
Okay. Next question. What do you think about grow bags?
I think that's a great way to grow things. Put a plant in a grow bag and let her go.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few different uh, different ways that people are doing it. The concept's very similar. Something you can move around. Um, I saw those portable raised beds. I thought those were neat. I can't remember what they were called. Someone we talked about a couple weeks ago. I think. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think all that stuff's great. Anything that's going to get more people growing stuff and learning about plants, I think is great. Um,
You could just
move,
take a bag of potting soil, poke a hole in it, plant a plant in
and
it.
yeah, it'll probably be fine. Um, moving along here, I'm actually starting some mulberry and loquat currently. I've been dropping cassava around the property for a while to start putting some biomass down. So thanks for the thorough answer. That's what we do here is thorough answer. Sometimes they might be a little too thorough. We've been told. Of course, yeah, you're welcome. Um, and Michael here asks how to treat powdery mildew on squash and cantaloupe.
Bacchanal.
That's a you question. I'm not sure.
Bacchanal. All those fungal diseases use bacchanal.
Well, we're
That,
getting.
by the way, is an indication of generally a watering problem. Uh, Try not to uh, leave the leaves wet uh, on any of these plants. If you can water underneath the plant, that is so much better. If you water in the morning so that they don't
So it'll
they're
evaporate
not
during the
wet at
day.
night.
Yeah, that
And I'm serious about Daconel. That is a very very good product in that for the homeowner, it pretty much treats all the fungal diseases on just about all the plants you've got, and it's a very safe thing. DACONIL.
DACONIL, and that he says that they're in hydroponics.
I don't know anything about hydroponics.
I don't either.
We've got this
The
little
leaves never
hydroponic.
get wet, is what he's saying.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not a hydroponics guy.
DACONIL.
There we go.
I need to learn to speak plainer, I think.
No, I think we're all good. We are getting a little close on time here, so I do want to tell everybody what's going on over here with the Extension Office and their Hernando County Florida Friendly Landscaping Program. So on Saturday, April the 20th, we are having our Earth Day, Florida Friendly Earth Day celebration. That's going to be at the Master Gardener Nursery on Oliver Street in Brooksville. It's behind the fairgrounds right off of 41. I think we're going to be out there from about 9 to 12. There's going to be all kinds of informational booths there. They're going to be selling tons of Florida friendly plants. They have a lot of natives. They have some of the ground covers that we've mentioned. And I think there'll be face painting and other activities for the kids. So please come out and enjoy that Earth Day celebration with us. I have links to that event on my link tree right here. That'll route you to a Facebook page. Also on Wednesday, April 17th, so next Wednesday, we are having a compost bin rain barrel workshop. That's going to be at my office here in the admin building. And you can sign up for that once again at my link tree. I think this is the second link there. I think the first one's Earth Day. And just fill out that form. You'll be on the list, and then you can come if you're a Hernando County resident and get a free $0, completely free compost bin. And or rain barrel for the rain barrel $66. That's at our cost, and you get, if you're a utilities customer, you get a $35 rebate on your water bill. So That's what we have there. If you have any questions, not right now, that you need to speak to somebody later, you can call the IFAS office or the extension office right here at the number on the screen, or email all your really difficult, really tough questions right to Dr. Bill. His email is on the screen there. So, looking right here, just any last minute questions we have. Free mulch at any of the landfill sites. I'm not sure. Oh, I think the main landfill you can get. I wouldn't call it mulch, but it is like the yard waste that they've ground up. You'd have to call solid waste and recycling for that, and I have their number right here. Their phone number is 352-754-4112. You can call them and ask them what their policy is on all of that. I do know they have a lot of it at the main landfill over towards Citrus County. Michael asked, can he just bring soil by?
Well, we do not do the actual soil test.
It's shipped to Gainesville.
The soil test goes to the university. So we'll give you the form and a little bag that you put the soil in. You send the sample to the university with a check for $10. They send back, they tell you what the recommendation is for your particular plant. You know, if you say I have Bahia grass, they come back and they tell you what your pH is, what pH you want, how to get the pH adjusted, what nutrients it needs, and they tell you what all the little minor nutrients are in your soil. It's a super deal, and it's an amazing thing to watch it being done. I've been there several times, and it's probably the best bargain. It is a bargain. You know, $10 for all that information. You can't get that anyplace else. And
you pay a lot of money for one of these done privately. Like it's
little
super expensive.
You buy in a store to tell if you've got enough nitrogen or potassium or whatever, the soil pH. Those things are phony. They have very, very, very low accuracy. The Sumter County office had decided that they were going to do soil tests in-house. So they bought this really nice, high-quality laboratory setup, and they found out that they couldn't begin to get close to what the university's super setup was telling people. So they abandoned it. They couldn't even hit pH consistently. You know, if man brought the same soil in 4 days in a row, he got 4 different numbers. So
that stuff's
it's
really
sad.
tough, and they have unspeakable amounts of money invested in being able to tell you all these things. Exactly. So we got one more question here before we wrap up. I have a fiddly fig tree. I've been keeping an indirect light outside under a tree canopy. It hasn't grown any leaves in months despite fertilizing and regular water. What could I be doing wrong?
That could be a problem with nematodes. Those plants tend to be somewhat susceptible, and if they get a high nematode loading, it tends to stunt their growth. If it's not going backwards, I wouldn't worry about it. If it's going backwards, I'd actually dig it up and move it.
Well, there you go. Alrighty. Well, it is time for us. I want to thank everybody for listening to us today and asking all your questions. If you guys didn't do that and be so responsive, we would not do this each week. So once again, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and a great weekend. We'll see you next week.